You might have heard about the abuse in boarding schools before, but did you know that it goes back centuries? It's time to learn about the indigenous boarding schools and the abuse that went on there. You won't want to miss this. It all started with the best of intentions, or so they thought. In the 1800s, some well-meaning folks in the US and Canada had an idea. They wanted to help the indigenous kids by taking them away from their families and giving them an education. They figured that if they could just strip these kids of their native language, culture, and religion, then they'd be better off in the long run. Yeah, you heard that right. These people actually thought that taking everything away from these kids was somehow going to help them. These boarding schools were supposed to be a way to help indigenous kids become civilized, as they were called back then. The plan was to teach them English and the ways of the white man. The American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions took charge of educating indigenous children in the U.S. This was the beginning of the boarding school system. As the years went on, more and more indigenous kids were taken away from their families and sent to these boarding schools. By the 1900s, there were about 25 of these schools and thousands of indigenous kids were living there. The Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania was one of the biggest at its peak. It had over 1,000 students. But here's the thing. The intention of these schools was good, but the way they went about it was not. I mean, can you even imagine a world where people think it's okay to take your kid away from you because of who they are? These indigenous kids were not able to speak their native language, practice their religion, or even connect with their own culture. They were forced to cut their hair short and wear uniforms. And if they tried to speak their native languages, they were punished. Some of the things they did were truly horrible. Imagine being a kid and having your parents taken away from you without your say-so. That's what happened to these indigenous kids. They didn't get to say goodbye to their families, or even have a chance to say how much they loved them. Some of these kids never saw their families again. It gets even worse. A lot of these boarding schools were run by people who didn't care about the kids at all. They were just interested in getting paid. Let's just say they weren't very nice to the kids. They made the students do hard labor like cleaning buildings and working in kitchens. And if the kids weren't strong enough to do all that work, they got punished. Imagine being made to work like a grown-up when you're still just a child. The worst part was that these boarding schools were supposed to be a safe place for indigenous kids, but they turned out to be anything but. There were reports of sexual abuse at some of these schools, but the people in charge didn't do much to stop it. Now, here's something that will blow your mind. It was until the 1970s that people started to learn the truth about what went on at these indigenous boarding schools. Before that, the U.S. government and the church kept secrets about the abuse and the awful things that happened there. It's sad that it took so long for the truth to come out. But here's the thing. We should remember what happened at these schools so that we can make sure it never happens again. It's important to learn about the indigenous cultures that were almost lost because of these boarding schools. By sharing these stories, we honor the strength and the spirit of those indigenous kids and communities. What happened at these boarding schools is a dark chapter in history, but it's a story that needs to be told. Remember, by learning about the past, we can make sure that we build a better future for everyone. Now it's time to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.